Okay, the next step of our process is going to be to install the shifter shaft. Just as simple as it looks, that's all it is. That's all it's going to take. I also have a extra old used shift lever from a different type model bike, Yamaha, but it fits the shaft well and it's good for testing purposes. This shaft, again, has been pre-lubricated for the purpose of making sure that when the shaft's being installed, we don't tear up that new seal, that shaft seal we put in, and gives a little bit more pre-lubrication until the engine oil starts really circulating after everything's running. So we'll let that set a minute. We're going to come over here. We talked in one of the earlier sessions regarding the studs. We got the small stud, which is a retainer for the spring. We got the larger stud. This is where the larger stud comes into play. Also, I had the shift drum in first gear for purpose of installing the input and output shafts. For the shifter shaft, I'm going to go to neutral. So that's it, right there. You see, we'll go back. There's first gear, a half cut, second gear, third gear, fourth, fifth, and that's the entire cycle of the drum. So I'm going to bring it back, half click. I'm verified I'm in neutral, and another way to do it, hold back on the output shaft, spin the input shaft, and I'm in neutral. So, it's as simple as that. No tools are really required. Just going to take the shifter shaft, install it into this bore here. There's no bearing required. The block is bored as a bushing for this function. And you'll feel it penetrate the new shaft seal. And you just want to make sure you go nice and easy, don't tear nothing up. As I get closer to that stud, as you can see, I'm going to land these two spring tails on both sides of that stud, and I'm also going to just open up the ratchet mechanism and continue to slide it in. All said and done, this should be the center of these two springs, end of the shaft flush with the clutch flange, and I'm landed onto the shifter drum. Go over and grab my little lever here. Just going to slip it on, and again, this is for test purposes only. Just slide it on. We know we're in neutral, as we verified. One down, and sometimes you got to roll these things around. And as you can see, fork number 3 engaged into the driven gear of first gear. First gear on the input shaft is stationary and solid with the shaft. It's actually machined with the shaft. There's our first gear. Half click back, neutral. We'll go on to second gear. Now I'm second. I've engaged this dog off the spline into the second gear, which now becomes part of the drivetrain. Lubricated with motor oil. The rings have been lubricated with motor oil. Compression tools on properly. Now as we're talking about cylinder 1. Cylinder 1, crank pin 1. Radius is to the left. My bevel must be to the left. That's the sharp edge. I want to flip it over. There's my bevel edge. So this piston has to go in this way in order to prevent from binding and causing a lot of damage. I'm going to go ahead and take my cap off. Everything's been lubricated really well. So here we go. You just want to let this go in nice and easy. Don't let the rod drag on the cylinder wall. What I like to do, just a hammer, I'm going to use the wooden end. Piece of wood, something soft. I'm just going to try to hold that ring compression tight to the block, that compression tool. Start tapping this in. And there we go. It's as simple as that. So we have all of our cams installed. We're timed. We believe we're timed correctly. Our tensioners are in place. So what I'm going to do now is roll the engine around a little bit. Feel for any real hard spots. Now there's a difference between the lobe of the cam, and you're going to feel that resistance, and an actual hard hit. You want them to go nice and slow. Make sure the first couple of times around, make sure you got no hard hits. If you do, stop right there. We've got something wrong. So this feels pretty normal to me. I'm going to bring this back around to my black timing marks, and I'm just going to eyeball it in here. Take a quick look through my timing hole, and yes, I'm coming into timing mark number 2. So I'm happy with what I see there. I'm going to go do the same thing for timing mark number 1. And again, I'm just going to eyeball it up. Try to get it close. That looks really good. Check my flywheel. And I'm right there. what the typical tool looks like. You can look it up in the catalog. You can order it from a dealer. I highly recommend you get the one from Yamaha. I have purchased an aftermarket one. It's rather soft material. Don't really like it. Now, what I've done is rotated the engine to where the cams are now in this position, or the lobes are facing this edge right here. I've also positioned my shim buckets. As you can see, these little notches are 180 degrees apart. I'm putting one right here. I'm putting this one over here. I'm putting over here. Because what will happen is this tool is driven by this hex. As it rolls around, I'm anticipating it's going to take those two windows and draw them in to where I'll have access to pick the shims out. Now, the effort is just to hook it onto the shaft, just as you see it. Maintain center. I'm going to hold it on there. I'm going to start rolling my engine in normal direction first. And as I get closer, I'm going to verify that I'm between both shim buckets. And eventually, the lip of this tool will grab just the shim buckets. You don't want to land on top of the shim, just the shim bucket. And it's going to prematurely compress the buckets. As we have our tool installed, we've rotated the engine to where we've compressed just the buckets, not the shims. The shims ride with the buckets. And I'm just going to show you these two tools. Small pair of hemostats. I'm using this prick tool it's got a goofy little end on it. It happens to be the one I like. You can use straight, whatever. Now, as we talked about those windows rolling to the center, I didn't quite get where I wanted to. But all I'm going to do is get under that shim and try to pop it off. And as you can see, that one came up. I'm going to reach in with my hemostat, grab that shim and pull it out. Now we know we were tight, so I'm going to look at my size, and it's a 255. So I'm going to set that one to the side. I'm going to pop this other one because they were both tight. I happen to be doing both at the same time. And again, just use the hemostats. Make sure you control the shim. And as I'm moving away from the cam chain galley, I have heard of guys dropping them down in there. We found both of these very tight. This one here had a shim size of 265 in it. I'm going to drop it down to a 260. I have my 260. Numbers on the back. Number faces down. Give the next guy a running chance. The next guy that does your valves. And what I'll do is I'll try to position that in there. I've got my poker in there, and I'm just going to try to get it to land just like that on top of the shim bucket. Now I'm going to take a screwdriver and just try to snap it in and seat it. And there you go. You heard it snap in. So we'll move on to the next one.